everybody. Welcome back. Today is February 8th, 2024. This is Master Advisor episode number 84. We're going to be talking about training today with a couple of really impressive travel advisors who I'm really excited to introduce, including one who is a past guest. We also have a sponsor for today's session, so let's go ahead and get started. First things first, as always, you can go ahead and switch into speaker view if you haven't done so already. That's going to be the best way to watch today's episode. Second, go ahead and open the chat on the bottom right and drop any comments or questions or concerns in there. We're going to go ahead and grab them as we go along today. That's one of my favorite parts of this episode and then this series is getting interact with the chat. So if you do have any questions, any comments, again, please don't be shy. Drop them in there. Next, I just wanted to say thanks to all those who came out a couple weeks ago for the episode with emotional branding with ASA's Alvin Adriano. I always love talking to Alvin. I always get a lot out of those episodes. So again, thanks to him. Thanks to everyone who came out. We're going to go ahead and drop the link to our YouTube in the chat now. So if you do want to watch it or rewatch it, you can go ahead and do it there. Just a reminder, all of our content, all of our video and audio content's on the YouTube page. So if you want to head over there, again, any subscriptions, any likes, any comments, really does help us grow that channel. So if you're a fan of these episodes, please head over there. And all those interactions really do help us a whole lot. And last thing, I just also want to announce that we'll be back here in 2 weeks to talk about personalized service, which is one of those topics that we've been asked about consistently by our audience for Master Advisor. We have a great travel advisor lined up. His name is Jamie Anderson. I'm really excited to have him. I'm really excited to see you all there too. So we're going to see if we can drop that link in the chat too. If you want to register ahead of time, you can go ahead and do so. And yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Okay. All right. So to kick us off here, I'm happy to introduce Steve Phillips from Core, who's going to help us kick off today's session on training by talking to us a little bit about Core.
Thanks, Dan. Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Phillips, Senior Director of Education and Training for Core Travel Education. Core is a complete solution to bringing new talent into the travel industry. It was really built with 3 goals in mind. First is recruitment. We're active in the marketplace with online advertising and live events, looking for people with an interest in a career in travel. And I emphasize career. We are actively out there looking for people who want to become professional travel advisors, whether it be as employees or independent contractors. The second goal, of course, is training. Our 100% self-paced digital curriculum is designed to give a new entrant into the industry the proper foundation on which they can build a true career in travel. Our 16-module curriculum is the equivalent of a 1-semester college-level course. The last goal was placement. By our students working with a mentor during their studies, they already have a leg up on placement with an agency, whether it be as an employee or an independent contractor. And if that mentor agency doesn't work out, we have agencies across the US and in Canada that are actively looking for people, both employees and independent contractors. With a strong emphasis on sales, marketing, digital content, and relationship building, Core offers skills needed to undertake a career in travel. Students also receive a full training on all sectors of the industry, including air, hotel, cruise, guided and FIT vacations, ground transportation, and insurance. We also pay special attention to legal matters within the industry to ensure that a new entrant into the industry has all the tools they need to ensure that both they, their agency, and their customers are protected from a legal and a fraud protection standpoint, as well as operating within the regulations of our industry. Core Travel Education is truly a one-stop solution to all things needed to increase your in-house staff, your remote workers, or your independent contractors. If you do have interest in learning more about Core, Dan, I can put the web address in my email in the chat if that's okay.
Yeah, you can go ahead. I believe Tom might have it.
Okay, perfect.
Might be ahead of you on that. Yeah, there it goes.
Perfect. So
yeah.
our website address is in the chat, and you can contact us. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And I just appreciate the opportunity to come on board and talk a little bit about Core. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And I know Steve's around at a lot of industry events too. So if you want to say hello, you have some questions about Core, I'm sure Steve, you'd be more than happy to meet and greet people.
I'll be at CLIA 360 and at ASTA this year, both in the next 2-3 months.
All right. All right. Perfect. Thanks again, Steve. Thanks to Core.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, let's go ahead and introduce our two travel advisors, our two guests for today's episode. I'm really, really excited and really happy to welcome Heather DiPietro and Bridget Merritt from Travel Sales Group. Heather has been with us twice before. This is Bridget's first time with us. We're really excited and happy. This is an interesting way to sort of tackle this subject. Um, yeah, but before we do so, I just want to say thank you, Heather. Thank you, Bridget. I know how busy everyone is these days, so we really appreciate both of your time, and for joining us here today.
Thanks for having us. I
Yeah.
watch these so often. So the times that you've asked me to be a part of one, I just hope that I can be as helpful as a lot of these people have been to me when I've watched.
All right, so I know, again, Heather, I know a lot of our audience knows you already, but I'm hoping we can start with just some short introductions. We'll go with you, Heather, first, and then Bridget, we'll let you have the floor for a little bit too.
Okay. I've been in the industry for about 20 years. I started as an IC. Started my own agency 11 years ago. And this past year, we launched a second brand, She's the World, which is targeting solo female travelers.
Okay.
So I have 5 agents who work for me. Bridget is one of my full-timers, and then I also have another full-timer and 3 ICs.
Okay. And Bridget, I know I'm not going to say recently gotten in the industry, but you've gotten in the industry and sort of hit the ground running pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still think it's recent. I laugh because Heather's like, "You've been here a while," and I'm like, "I don't feel like that." So I'm about almost 3 years in, and so I started as Heather's administrative assistant, sat behind her for about a year and a half, just soaking up everything that she had to offer, which was a ton. And so I've really enjoyed it. I've got into it, and she made the mistake of telling me I could sell a little bit of travel on the side to make some extra money. And about a year and a half later, she's like, you got the wrong job. So she turned me into a full-time advisor. And so here I am.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk about your entry in particular, like moving into the industry as an administrative assistant and moving into a sales role. I'm just curious, Bridget. I don't need to know a ton about what you did, I guess, in your past life, but I mean, what kind of skills did you have that I think it would be nice just to hear about, like if you had sales skills, marketing skills, just so we can sort of set the stage for the trading discussion today.
Yeah, so my previous experience, I was an accountant for about 9 years. And so
Okay.
I worked as an inventory auditing accountant for about 9 years, which is the most boring job in the world. But I enjoyed it. I didn't mind it so much. I liked the kind of the tedious part of it, I guess, was somewhat appealing. So, I mean, I always knew what I was doing every day, but I was traveling. So I was in a different area a lot. And then most recently, I had done food distribution sales. So I did have a somewhat of a sales background. But I really didn't know much as far as the travel industry and as a whole. I was pretty green coming in. So that obviously what we're talking about is training. Training was,
Yeah.
vital. I had to have it because there was just so much that I didn't know. So it's been an eventful 3 years learning everything that I have learned, but there's just so much more. And I think that's what I love the most about the industry is there's always something new to learn. You can't possibly do this job and get bored because there is always something out there that you don't know yet because things are constantly changing and the world is so huge. You
Yeah.
can't get it all. So
Yeah. All right. So again, today is going to be all about training, but I hate missing opportunities to ask people about consumer sentiment simply because we're still fairly early in 2024. There's always concerns about if demand is dropping off. And I want to ask Heather and Bridget, I want to ask you both about what you're hearing from your clients. Is there anything new, any trends or any things on the horizon that you think is particularly interesting or you think would be good for the advisors on the call to hear about? Heather, anything from your side, whether it's with Travel Sales Group or even She's the World?
The big thing for us, I mean, solo female travel is definitely a trend that is on the rise, and we feel like we jumped on that right about the right time. But a lot of Europe, a lot of river cruises, we're getting a ton of requests for those. We get a lot of St. Lucia. We're doing a ton of Aruba right now. Bridget's getting a ton of Aruba requests. Other than that, I think the main change that I have seen is just post-pandemic, everybody was tired of being stuck in their house and they were willing to spend whatever they had to spend to get away. And I am seeing that cooling off just a little bit. We're getting more questions about sticker shock, more questions about, like, our luxury clients maybe don't ask about that much of stuff, but all of our kind of mid-range clients, which is more than half of our business, I would say, they're starting to ask questions about, seriously, I can't go to Mexico for less than $4,000 for a week. I went 3 years ago for 2,500. So I am seeing a little bit more of that and a little bit more of the pushback with pricing. But aside from that, everything is, we're still just as busy as we've ever been. It's just people are looking for more value and more customization is a big word right now. People don't want the same old trip. They want a custom planned vacation.
All right, Bridget, are you hearing the same things, or when you're testing the waters with your clients?
Pretty similar for sure. And yeah, Aruba, I don't know why, it's just been a super hot ticket lately. So
Yeah.
I've done quite a bit of that. And the other thing that I'm seeing is multi-gen. It seems to be getting bigger, at least for me. You know, in the beginning, a couple of years ago, I would book a couple, and then now I'm booking a couple and then their adult children. And now I'm booking that couple, their adult children and their kids' kids. Like, so it's kind of evolved into what started as a couples trip is now family travel a lot. So I'm seeing quite a bit of that. And the other thing that I've noticed it's really on the rise recently for me, I handle a lot of pretty much all of North America. So I'm seeing a lot of out west, and Yellowstone put everything on the map. So everybody wants to go out to Wyoming and Montana and Colorado, and people were wanting to see Grand Canyon, Bryce National Park. National parks are really big right now. So I'm seeing some of that trend as well.
I know you said it's difficult to know, Bridget, but like, any ideas why Aruba seems to be trending at all? I mean, because I imagine, are you seeing like softness in pricing there, or more availability than you would see at other destinations in the Caribbean?
I definitely see the pricing being more competitive than, say, a St. Lucia or an Antigua trip. So I think once people have done Jamaica, you know, Dominican and Mexico, they're looking for something unique. They're looking for something new. And, you know, that Turks or St. Lucia just might be out of reach. And so Aruba is really a great mid-grade option that I have found. And honestly, I've gotten to where, you know, a lot of, you know, my Mexico, Caribbean clients, most of them are all inclusive, but I don't always sell the all-inclusive at Aruba. I think it's great to give them the opportunity to have the option of both, or, you know, one or the others, where they can go and get off resort and get into the island and really see the destination and eat in town and enjoy all the amazing food that Aruba has to offer. So I think that that's another reason why there's been an uptick for that.
All right, really interesting. Yeah, thank you both for that. I always love to check on client sentiment. But let's get into training, because I know that's why all of our audience is here today. Heather, I want to start out with you. Bridget mentioned she came on as an administrative assistant to your agency. When we spoke earlier in the week, she said she was looking for a career or possibility of a career that had certain flexibility and things like that. And, you know, coming into travel was something she hadn't considered before she saw your posting for an administrative assistant. I was hoping we could talk a little bit about your philosophy when you're bringing people into the industry, because I know that's a big task and it's a big concern for a lot of people who own agencies and who are running consortia and hosts and things like that.
Absolutely. Almost everybody that I know right now is looking for people, because everybody is so busy and they're all shorthanded and they want somebody. For me, I had a decision. This whole thing is about training. I did a 10 KSB course with Goldman Sachs, and they really emphasize in that about working on your business instead of in your business. Well, if I was going to do that, I needed to have somebody to help me out, but I didn't know whether it was going to be an admin or an agent or an advisor. So I decided that I was going to keep on selling and keep bringing money in. Bringing in an admin would allow me to just do the part that I'm good at, which is guiding people to the right destination and the right hotel. Once I have that deposit on it, I don't touch my bookings. So in doing that, Bridget was getting some training. So I hired that admin, but she's going through all of our booking systems. She's going through all of our VCRM. And to be honest, now my philosophy is I would bring people in that role first and then let them graduate into an advisor position because they're learning everything about it that way. The things that she wasn't getting in the day in, day out interactions with me were the things that I just didn't have time to teach her. And that was a lot of the geography that I'm still not good at, if I'm being totally honest. She would kick my butt at geography after taking core. But those things are the things that I don't have time to teach someone. So there's courses out there, and core is a perfect example of them, where they can take and give you that time back and help you to train that advisor. So when we bring them in, we tend to bring people in either as an admin or as a part-time IC and let them grow within the company. The best way to train people is the way that Bridget, in my opinion, is the way that Bridget was trained. And that was, she sat next to me 3 or 4 days a week, every day, because like she said, every day is different. There's something new popping up every day, and you need to have an answer, and you need to have this, and sitting next to me and just hearing me on the phone with clients and things being thrown back and forth. That is the best way to learn. And then those really specific things that they need to know about the industry, training programs like core are great for that, to fill that in.
Yeah, and I know there's research out there about how training can increase profitability and sales and things like that. But I'm curious, Heather, I mean, do you have any requirements, whether it's for new people coming into your agency or agents you already have or ICs you work with? Do you have any requirements for them when it comes to training? Whether
I
it's
do.
taking core or something else? Yeah.
If I'm bringing someone in brand new, we actually do require them to take core. And the way that we do that is we get calls, and I'm sure there's a lot of people, if there's any agency owners on the meeting, I get at least twice a week somebody that wants to be a travel advisor because they follow me on Facebook and see me traveling and think that's my job. And I tell them, no, that's this much of my job. This much of my job is sitting in front of a computer 14 hours a day. So if they're really serious, we require them to take core, and then I will up their commission split by 5% as soon as they complete that program.
Interesting.
So it's a way, within a few months, if they're selling, they're going to get the money back that they invested, certainly by the end of the year. So that is something that I require. And then with all of my advisors, they are required to do at least an hour of training within their niche every month. And then we have a monthly, I try to do it monthly. It doesn't happen every month, but I try to do a monthly. Bridget's laughing at me. We try to do it once a month. It ends up being 6 or 7 times a year. And at least 3 or 4 of those, we bring in a vendor. Maybe it's somebody new, or maybe it's somebody that there's been a lot of changes. We bring a vendor partner in to go over everything and kind of teach a little crash course so that they're getting that training with me. But most of my advisors are doing way more than that hour. That's just what's required in their contracts.
Okay. Yeah, and I do want to ask Bridget about what she found most relevant during that phase of training. But Heather, like, just to play devil's advocate, I know I talk to travel advisors a lot. I know how busy everyone is. I know the volume of, like you mentioned, maybe there's a little softness in consumer spending from some segments of the population, but the volume seems to not be going down as much. I know time is short. Again, like I mentioned, why would an agency owner want to sacrifice valuable hours for training when hypothetically agents or ICs, they could be out there making sales and directly contributing to your bottom line?
Well, one of the things in the industry that I'm most passionate about is training and certifications and things like that, because it sets an actual professional travel advisor apart from people that want to come and do this job very part-time enough to pay for their own travel. So if you're doing that training, it's going to make you more. And there are so many people. I actually jotted down a couple of quotes because for me, these are things that I thought were really important. Bill Gates still reads a book every single week. Warren Buffett sets aside time every single day to read for up to 5 hours from all different newspapers to keep up with his industry. And Mark Cuban has been known to say, treat your business like a sport. staying competitive means always reaching for knowledge. So, and I really do believe that. I think you have to, if you want to stay competitive in the market and if you want to be really good at what you're doing, it is an ever changing business. You have to stay on top of that training. Otherwise, everybody else is going to pass you. So it may be formal training, or it may be talking to, like, I belong to several different organizations. That to me is training. Sitting and talking, if I'm on a board and I sit and talk with the other 12 people that are on a board, I learn a ton from that as well. So I consider that training and well worth my time also.
Okay. All right, Bridget, I would love to sort of, now that we've set the stage, I'm curious, when you were getting into the industry, when you mentioned finding Heather's job posting and eventually making your way as an administrative assistant and then through where you are now. I'm curious what your perception of how travel advisors worked was, and then when you did get to experience it firsthand, did that perception meet the reality of the situation?
Well, coming in so green to everything, I really had no preconceived notions. So I really didn't know what to expect. And I didn't come into the job with the idea that I was going to make a career out of travel. I was going to work, with her a couple of days a week, work from home a couple of days a week, and do a little bit of admin work. And that's really, at that time, was all I was after. And so, I just got into it. And like I said, I just kind of fell in love with it because there's just always something to learn. You can't get bored. There's so much. And I started to travel, and then I started to get into it a little bit more, and then I tried selling. I put a few social media posts up just to let people know I did it, and then people were coming out of the woodwork for things. And I think that first year, I want to say I topped like 200 for the first year in sales, and so it was crazy. I just didn't realize that there was even that big of a market
While still
for it.
working as my part-time assistant, she topped $200,000 in sales. That's when I decided she was in the wrong job.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I had no preconceived notions and I didn't know what to expect. So, for that to happen so quickly and to happen the way that it did, I almost just felt like it was really fate that I was supposed to be here and this is the way it was supposed to work. And I can't really imagine doing anything different now. I've really just fallen in love with it.
Yeah, and you mentioned you had a sales role before this. You mentioned you were an accountant. Um, I'm curious, I mean, what kind of skills or qualities did you not have when you entered the industry that you now can look back and recognize that those things are absolutely vital to having success in this career?
I think probably the biggest thing would be the product knowledge. I mean, just not knowing what I didn't know, coming in and being able
Okay.
to train and learn as much as I've learned. And I mean, traveling, and that's such a big thing. Training is huge, but just to travel and get the experience, because one of the things that's really vital when speaking to a client is you have to be able to relate to them the experience, because if you can't explain the experience to them, they're not going to grasp it fully until they go. So your job as an advisor is to kind of bridge that gap, I guess, between what their expectation is and what the reality is of what they're going to see. So when you start traveling, you pick that up, and I think too that it really, traveling gives you almost more of a humbleness almost, and really gives you a gratitude for your world and for what you have at home. So I think those things are really important to have, and I think that's just vital when you're speaking with your client, because you need to have that. You need to have those perceptions so you can share those, so the client really understands what they're buying into.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about more specific things in the training modules and things like that, but it's interesting, Bridget, you mentioned traveling being so vital. And in a way, it's its own training because you're going to need to talk about that experience and the firsthand knowledge. You said you want to relate to the experience to your clients. You want to help them bridge the gap. I'm just curious. I mean, what kind of things do you usually need to tell them or warn them about or inform them of, but when you're bridging that kind of gap? Like, is it just about like resort experiences, cruise experiences, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all of those things. I think it's important to know that, if you go on to, if you're a consumer and you go onto a consumer facing site like an Expedia or Travelocity, and you're looking up resorts in Cancun, you can look up 300 resorts there. You have no idea which ones are good or bad. You're kind of going on what their perception of those places are. And then the other kind of key factor in that, which almost kind of hit me in the face this week, and this just kind of goes to show you really got to look into it a little bit more. But I'm going to Tulum in a couple weeks. I had no idea it was that far away from Cancun. So I knew it was far, but I didn't realize it was that far. I mean, if you're a consumer and you go on and you see, oh, there's Dreams Tulum down in Tulum, but it's just right here. It's on the Cancun site. It can't be that far. Yeah, it's almost 2 hours away. So I think knowing that type of stuff and being able to educate your client, hey, you may want to upgrade to that private transfer to Tulum because it's just so much nicer and you'll get there a little quicker. Having that in your arsenal to be able to not just to upsell, but to be able to just inform the client, because those are important things that they need to know, what their experience is and what they're going to get. Hey, it's going to be a while before you get there. Grab a snack before you leave the airport, or whatever that particular piece of information may be that they need, before they book.
Yeah. So I guess geography is going to be an important one. Heather, I think you mentioned geography a couple of minutes ago. That seems to be underrated. Like, it doesn't seem to be something people hourly talk about in travel that you need to know. You need to know the difference between Eastern Europe and Western Europe, and even like Northern California, Southern California, things like that. It seems so important to know those things, partly because you need to show your client the level of credibility you have.
Right. Well, and I mean, there's a big difference between Grenada and Granada. You want to make sure that you're booking the right airport. Geography, if you are one of the old school travel advisors that went through or even one of the new ones that went through and took a college course on hospitality and travel, a big part of that was geography. For those of us that didn't come into the industry that way, that's something that you have to take on yourself. And traveling certainly helps you with that. If you're the other side of my camera behind me, or photos right in front of me, I have maps of everywhere in the world. So if I am sitting on the phone with a client and they ask me, well, if we go to Barbados, what's close to that? And I can, that one I know, but if I didn't know, I can look at the maps and go through and point that out. But I think what she got through CORE was a deep dive into geography, which I don't have. I have geography based on where I've been, what I've done, where my clients ask me for.
Yeah, Bridget, anything to add about, I guess, your experience learning geography, or maybe any surprising things, anything else you can share with us?
Well, that was one thing I really enjoyed about CORE. That was probably my favorite part of the whole program, was just being able to get into the geography, seeing everything. And they really took it a step further. So it wasn't just, where is this, or what's the airport code, or what's this? It was more than the logistics of it. They actually went into the culture of the people, the history of the area, why you need to see this, what's important, what are hot spots for you to see when you're in a certain area. So, I mean, while, they give you geography, they really gave you a more in-depth look at the destination as a whole versus just where is it on the map. And I thought that was interesting. It was neat to learn about some of those things, because there was a lot of stuff obviously that I didn't know. So
yeah. And just, I guess, one thing just to prove how important geography is, I remember when the Ukraine-Russia war broke out, in 2022, I think, at this point. I know advisors I spoke to were getting questions about people booking travel in Western Europe and wondering if they were going to be affected by something that was, a good bit away. So obviously geography, maybe the public isn't as informed as they believe they are, and travel advisors need to fill that role for them. It seems like is really a certain point.
Well, and it's something that we use every day. It's like this past week, we had the issue come up because there was something that went on the news about Jamaica and how they had upped the security protocols. They didn't up security protocols. They kept them the same as they were a year ago. They just redid them. But having some geographical knowledge of where those hotspots in Jamaica are, that's what we use to argue those points. We go in and we look up, okay, what are the crime rates in St. James, and what are the crime rates, and where is your traveler from? and I'll go in and I'll look. In Charlotte, the crime rates were 8 times higher than they are in Jamaica. So when you can go back to your client and say that, because you know where in that geographical region they are, it makes a huge difference, and it can kind of calm those fears a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious, Bridget, I mean, what other modules or what other information did you find most helpful when you were, I guess, initially onboarding and then continuing your education throughout the last few years? You mentioned airport codes. That seems another thing that is going to really lend to your level of credibility when you're speaking with your clients and an airport that maybe they may not be familiar with comes up.
Right. I mean, I think there was a lot, not even just in core, but in a lot of the other training that I've done that was just really vital. I think just destination training, learning about an area. I mean, you can't sell it if you don't know it. So you really got to take time to do those destination specialist programs. I think those are really huge. I think I know I've done Jamaica, St. Lucia, Aruba. There's several different ones. I think Costa Rica. Might even be a few others. And then your supplier trainings are so important. It's, learning those. Right now I'm trying to finish the Virgin Voyages training so I can, be certified in that. And I've done, I think almost all. I think I have a master's degree with Norwegian now. And so some of those supplier trainings and destination trainings are just really important to do in addition to something that's a little more foundational like core.
And that was actually one of my favorite things about core, is that towards the end of the program, they actually offer a lot of those supplier trainings, and you have the links right there. So it's a one-stop shop to be able to access those things. And you can kind of note which ones are your preferred suppliers. And at the end, Bridget got herself a whole manual that she could go back to. So from the owner's standpoint, it saves me a ton of time, because there's a ton of questions that she would normally call me and ask me that now she doesn't have to. She just goes back and looks back through her notes.
Yeah, we're going to launch a poll now. I'm just curious, with the 50 or so people we have in, how many do take training on a regular basis. But Bridget, you mentioned supplier trainings, which is something I did want to ask about too, because I know almost every supplier is launching their own training or has launched their own training. What specific things do you find most important to get out of the supplier training? I know cruise lines is like a whole nother world for people outside the industry. What kind of things are important when you are taking the training, just to make note of and be able to pass along to your clients?
Well, the most value that I take from training, maybe not necessarily is always for the client, might be more for me, because I think one of the most valuable things that I can take from supplier training is how to book the actual trip, how to book the vacation, how to book with that supplier, having them walk you through their booking engine and how it works, and what to take, what to do with the information that they've given you, and how to figure all that out. I think that's really important. And then, yeah, of course, they go through and they explain all of, like, if you're taking the one for, I've done the one for Princess. So if you're taking that, they go through, they teach you about the medallion class. They teach you about, why the medallion class is so important and what all it does. And so all of those things are great for you to be able to share with the client. But if you don't know how to book it, then you're in trouble. You have to know how to do that part. So I think that's probably the most important.
Yeah. All right. And then what about things? So we talked about geography, airport codes, destination training is important, suppliers training obviously important for both you and the client. What about skills training, like marketing or sales? And I know, Bridget, you mentioned your sales background, but what kind of things helped you along the way in those two arenas? Like, I can't imagine that it was super easy. Maybe it was for you, but it's easy making that initial sale or learning the best way to market vacations to your clients.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously, just like anybody else, I try to use a lot of social media, and I was fortunate. I had a couple different jobs. I've been a part of several different organizations, so I have a pretty large Facebook following, I guess, and so I have a lot of friends and things like that. So I was really fortunate when I tried to start launching different things on my Facebook page that, I was able to use a lot of social media marketing to grow my client base. So I think that training is important. And at what I had started doing in the beginning is I would just pick a resort and I would steal some of Heather's photos because I hadn't been, and I would just start putting them up on my Facebook page and I would go to the resort website and I would pick out, 5 or 6 things that I wanted to mention about it, how many restaurants it had, what type of restaurants, or what different things that they offered, where they were located, like just general stuff like that, that you would think that doesn't make a difference. Like anybody can figure those things out. All they got to do is look at the website, but people don't really want to take the time to do all of that. That's the one thing that I found in being an advisor is the client just doesn't, everybody's busy. Everybody's busy. And that's why we're so busy, because the client doesn't want to take all that time to do all that research. That's what they're relying on you for. So what I would do is I would go and do all the research, and then I would put up a post on my social media and say, oh, today's resort spotlight is such and such. And I would put all the photos and put my little write up on there. And before too long, people were, reaching out to me, hey, what about this? Or have you seen this? Or can you do a spotlight on this? And so I think social media is just that was really what did it for me. And so training on that and how to market yourself, with that credibility, I think was important.
That's interesting. I mean, Heather, what about you? You mentioned the quotes by Mark Cuban, Warren Buffett, and the third person I can't remember. But I imagine you still pursue your own training, and you have such a wealth of experience. You've launched 2 different agencies, but do you find yourself actively pursuing new skills or reinforcing old skills now? Like, what kind of things are top of your mind when you're doing your own training?
Oh, always. If anybody follows me on social media, you'd see one of my favorite hashtags is never stop learning. So like Bridget mentioned, I think traveling is huge. I try to see at least 2 new destinations every year. I've been very blessed the past few years that I've seen a lot more than that. There are several conferences that I go to every year. Affluent Traveler is a big one. Either Nest Fest or Travel Market. Those are both, whichever one is that year, it's every other year. They have Nest Fest one year and then Travel Market the following year. Female Leaders is not necessarily an educational conference, but that's one that fills my bucket every year. That one, I will plan nothing around. I plan everything around when that particular conclave is. They also have the Ally Symposium, which I love. So I try to go to at least 3 or 4 conferences every year. Ascend is another great one.
Mm-hmm.
So, and those things I think they're hugely important to do that. I don't care how long you've been in the business. There's always something new to learn. This year, you talked about marketing. I invested almost $14,000 in SEO this year, and I was getting 14 visits to our new webpage. And then I sat down at one of those conferences with a fellow advisor, had maybe a 20 or 30-minute conversation with him. And then we met at the airport when we were leaving to come home. And he showed me some little SEO trademark tips and things like that. And this month we had 600 visitors to our website. And I didn't pay anybody because he showed me how to do it. So little things like that. If you looked at marketing 10 years ago, it's completely different than it is now. So even if you went to school and got a degree in marketing, a lot of what you did 10 years ago to get that education is completely different than it was then. So you have to constantly be learning. I wish that I had more time in the day to spend more time training my advisors. It's the one place that I feel like I fall shy for sure, because there just isn't enough time in any given day.
Yeah. And you both mentioned social media. I know there's like a new social media outlet every month. It seems like, I know TikTok is trending now and Instagram trying to compete with Reels and stuff like that. I mean, what about when video has become this avenue for travel advisors? Have either of you had to pursue education and built around TikTok or a different platform, or just shooting video in general?
100%. And again, some of that I get from training. I go on and watch YouTube videos, things like that. Other things have been from trial and error. But I have learned so much of that from other advisors. And when you go to these conferences and just interacting with other people in the industry, I may be strong on a product knowledge front, where somebody else is really strong on SEO or on social media or any of that. Just sharing information and being willing to share that, that's huge. And I think cooperation versus competition, I think those are very different things. When you are with people that you trust in this industry, that's one of the things that I have taken away from Allies in a big way, is that we all learn from one another and there's enough business for everyone out there. What we want to do is elevate our industry as a whole. So if we're all professionals and we're all acting in a professional, ethical manner and sharing ideas, then it's going to elevate all of us.
Yeah, the level of cooperation industry, I don't think you can beat it with any other industry. I hear that from so many people. I
No.
see it in real life, in real practice, and it seems so almost startling at some points. But like you mentioned, the attitude of having enough business to go around is fairly pervasive. So I think it's a great point, Heather. Like
Yeah.
learn from the training modules, learn from core, learn from suppliers, learn from destinations, but learning from travel advisors, your fellow travel advisors, is also going to be important as
Yeah.
well.
The biggest thing for me, I
Go
think,
ahead.
was, I'm sorry. The biggest
No,
thing for
please
me
go ahead.
was 10 KSB. It's programmed through Goldman Sachs, and where I did not have as much knowledge as I would have, like, kind of muddled my way through for the first 6 or 7 years that I owned my own agency, is the business side of travel. And I know that core teaches some of that. I took my CTA, that taught some of that. But as far as getting right down to the nitty gritty of the actual business, there's a marketing piece, there's a sales piece, there is accounting, training, there's all of that. And it's probably the hardest thing that I have done as an agency owner. But I also got the best ROI on that, because when I started that program, I was a travel advisor that happened to have a business, and now I'm a business owner that happens to be a travel advisor. And those are two very different perspectives.
Yeah, it is interesting. We spoke to someone who had a former life as a VC and came in the industry, and just in my personal experience, the way, like you mentioned, Heather, she was a business person who's now selling travel, and like the way she was thinking about and quantifying her business and checking metrics just constantly was something I haven't heard from a lot of advisors. But it does seem like that kind of thinking is starting to come more and more into the industry. Like you mentioned yourself, and other people, I'm sure, are thinking the same way as well. Like, these travel agencies that people are running are obviously incredible businesses, and you have to start thinking about it as a business first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're not profitable, you're not going to be here very long. So, I kind of, like I said, I muddled my way through, and now that's one of the things that's on my list for this week, is building a new dashboard for 2024, tracking different metrics, keeping track of when I send leads to clients, what is or to other advisors, because when you're not selling anymore, you really need to find out, okay, who is going to be selling when I send my strong leads to an advisor? They need to be able to close those leads. So you have to be able to track that metric, so okay, who's selling and who's not.
All right, so we have an interesting comment from Bridget in the chat, who says she's a flight attendant, and one thing she had to learn was to use military time, because I know if you go to Europe, if you go anywhere else, probably outside North America, you're using military time, and that is a bit of an adjustment, because things can go very wrong if you're communicating non-military time to your clients incorrectly. So it's another good point to know. Maybe, I'm not sure if that's in core. I know Steve's still with us, but maybe it's something to add to core going forward.
Absolutely. It's already in there, sir.
All right, cool. All right, so I only have one more question. We did the poll, and it was 92% of the attendees on this episode said they do take regular training, and 8% said they don't. I'm just curious if we could start with you, Bridget. What would you say to the 8% who maybe aren't pursuing training right now, or even anyone else coming in the industry new and fresh, who thinks they can avoid training? Like, just, I know it's a pretty obvious answer, but what kind of words of wisdom would you have for those kind of people?
Yeah, I mean, that's an investment in you, as not just as an advisor, but just you as a person trying to help someone else. If you are trying to help someone else with their vacation, you have to take that initiative to do that training and know, because that helps build your credibility. And so, I mean, if you don't have credibility and professionalism, you're not going to be here very long. So if you really want to make this a formidable career for yourself, where you can continue to learn and grow and grow, just not just in your in your knowledge, but grow in your sales, you have to have that training. It's just so important. And start small. You don't have to start with something like core. I mean, core was foundational for me. If you're brand new, absolutely make the investment and do a program like that, if not that program, because it really gives you a full-on overview of everything in the industry that you will need that will help to propel you to know what you need to know to kind of start it. Taking core really gave me almost a little bit more of a respect for the industry because I understood how it worked and why it worked the way it did. And so that was important. And I'm sure that probably CTA or something like that does the same thing. I don't know. I haven't taken that program. So that's kind of the next step for me. But you need that. You need that because if you're brand new, understanding and learning about your industry, that is what you need to have that respect for your industry and to be able to grow and have that credibility and that professionalism with your client, because that's what's really vital is the credibility and the respect of the client. If you don't have that or you can't earn that, it's going to be very difficult for you to make a living doing this great job.
Yeah. And then something, Bridget, you mentioned to me earlier in the week that I should have asked about before, but you mentioned acronyms in this industry, and the industry is just so full of acronyms that if you come in blind, it just seems like people are speaking a foreign language. That was an important step for you too to be able to understand those acronyms and to have somewhere to go to find out what they mean too.
Right. And I still have to look some of those up every once in a while, which is, so it's great to be able to go back to my core training and find those because they are in there. I mean, it really, like I said, it gives you that foundational overview. It covers just enough of everything that you're able to really propel, and it takes you to a different level when you do that. And having other training to compound on top of that, whether that be those initial supplier trainings, destination trainings, whatever that is, that being able to refer back to those things and using that as your guideline for moving forward, it's important to be able to know all of those things. And that's why that training was so vital.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's great advice too, Bridget. Start small. I've heard that advice. We had a group session a couple weeks ago, and that was an advice because I know people get overwhelmed with trying to build these giant groups, but starting small, multi-gen groups, starting small with training, do a small training module. Eventually, you can certainly have the time and energy if you have it to expand. Heather, what about you? What would you say to that 8% of people on this call who maybe haven't taken a training course or aren't planning on taking regular training coming up monthly?
I mean, I'm very proud of what Bridget just said because it's exactly what I would say. It's what I taught her. It's our responsibility to know that information and to be able to book our clients into a trip that is safe and seamless and everything that they're expecting. So we always want to make sure that we have the product knowledge in that area. And if we don't have it, we want to make sure we can get it. But the bigger piece of advice that I would give to anybody on this is, and this is something that I learned in 10KSB, and I know it's something that Bridget talked about when she was in core, is designate that time. I use Calendly, and I don't take phone calls from clients until noon. So when I sit down in my office, I usually work 10 to 6, and then I don't really work 10 to 6, but that's when my clients think I work.
Yeah.
I work more like 8 to 2 in the morning, but from 10 to 12, I don't take client calls. That is my planning time. Now, does that get interrupted by emergencies and things? Yes. But if you designate that time, and even if it's one day a week, do that. And I was actually on a Zoom call with 2 friends of mine just discussing stuff. And one of them said, Wednesday is my CEO day. And I just mind blown. I was like, I need to do that. I need to take one day where I just do all the tasks that are working on my business. I said that for me is going to be Thursdays from now on because that's payroll day. So I already know I'm going to designate that time. If you don't cut that time out of your schedule and designate it to this, you won't do it. Now, the 10KSB program, that was 20 hours a week of classroom and homework time while I was running my business and launching a new brand. like I said, hardest thing I've ever done. But when I realized, you know what, if that's a priority and I can dedicate 20 hours, then I can dedicate an hour or 2 hours each week to do one thing that will build your business. If it's taking a social media course, if it's core, if it's whatever it is, if you take, even if it's 2 hours a week that you cut out, designate 2 hours a week to do one thing that will build your business. I guarantee you that you'll get it back incrementally.
Yeah, we have a great comment too. I guess echoing that, step back, pause it, and do a reset if you have to, because finding time for this stuff is always possible. But Heather and Bridget, thank you so much. We covered a lot of ground today. We mentioned a lot of different kinds of training: geography, airport codes, destination supplier, social media, SEO, travel conferences. We mentioned core with Steve, ASTA, Travel Institute. So there's so many different ways to get your training. There's so many different types of training you can get. If it's overwhelming, like Bridget said, start small. But thank you both for your time. I really enjoyed hearing from
Thank
both of you
you.
today, so I couldn't ask for more. And thanks again to Steve and to Core for sponsoring today's session as well.
Thank you. Our pleasure.
Um, we'll be back here in 2 weeks talking about personalized service with Jamie Anderson. But until then, I hope everyone stays safe, stays healthy, and hope to see everyone pretty soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care, everybody.